Welcome. The Quincy Branch NAACP are presenting a webinar entitled Race, Culture, and Diversity, a Conversation. I am Anise Mallory. I'm president of the NAACP. We have invited people from different persuasion, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and different cultures to share in this conversation. Our goal is to increase one's education about the various cultures, promote dialogue about understanding, and increase one's knowledge about racism. Hopefully, this will teach us on how to listen, to put yourself in the other person's shoes, or to talk about what can be done for racial healing. I am pleased to announce that this webinar was funded by the Healing Illinois grant through the Illinois Department of Human Services in partnership with the Chicago Community Trust. The Adams County United Way, Mr. Jeremy Wingerter, reached out to the NAACP about this grant, and we appreciate this opportunity. Now I want to introduce Carol, who will introduce our panelists and our moderator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carol Nichols. I have the privilege of being affiliated with the NAACP here in Quincy. And we asked several people to try to represent a little bit about their culture, background, heritage, their experiences, and their life in this country. And the first would be Reverend Jeff Green, and he represents the African American community, or at least has that background. And he is a pastor, well known to many people, having grown up in Quincy. And the second person we've asked is Omaima Abid, and she's a lovely lady who lives in Canton. Her husband is affiliated with the university or the college there, and she's graciously allowed us to speak with her. And she represents the Middle Eastern or Islamic heritage. Our third person is Luz Brown, and she is a wonderful lady who teaches Spanish at Quincy Senior High School and also at Quincy University. And she's graciously allowed us to talk with her this evening, and she's from Mexico. And the last person is a last-minute replacement, and I'm pleased to have Joy Austin here, who represents the Asian community. She's someone very much involved in the arts in Quincy and has long been affiliated with this area. So thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to see you all, and I love getting a chance to hear from you. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, and our speaker, our moderator is Professor Katisha Hodges, and she resides both at Quincy University and with her own practice in as a consultant psychologist. And again, she's another person I'm very privileged to have moderate the group. So thank you for coming.
Yes.
So at this point, we'll go ahead and get started, but I would like for each of our panelists to kind of give us a little insight into who we're speaking with, a little background about themselves and why this was important to them. And we can start, whoever wants to start, or I can call somebody out, because remember, I am a social worker, so I can sit in silence.
Well, I can. My name is Luz Brown, or Sansen de Brown. I am originally from Mexico. I moved to Quincy 25 years ago this September. I am a mother of two daughters, and older daughters. They're going to college, and one is done with college. And I've been teaching Spanish in the last 10 years. And I love teaching, and now I'm helping with Spanish classes here at QU as an assistant professor. And that's it.
Thank you. How about Joy?
Hi, my name is Joy Cortero Austin. I moved to Quincy actually almost 6 years ago now, from the west suburbs of Chicago. So I'm transplant here in this area. My heritage is actually Filipino, and my parents immigrated here basically in the early 80s. And I, was, yes, last minute asked to join the conversation, but very pleased to be here. I just until recently have been doing economic development work for Quincy and Adams County, also helping out with the Tri-State Development Summit, which encompasses Northeast Missouri and Southeast Iowa, and recently have taken a position with the National Main Street Center, which is actually a subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which also deals a lot with preserving spaces, places, but also cultures. And I'm a senior program officer there and the director of the Illinois Main Street program. So I deal a lot with downtown revitalization, which also very much includes preserving, again, history, spaces, but also the culture of communities. So this was definitely a very interesting conversation to be a part of, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. You are busy. Thank you. How about Reverend Green?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to be on this call. As she said, I'm Reverend Jeff Green. I am originally from Quincy, born and raised, graduate of Western Illinois University. I have been in ministry for some 20 years. I've been a youth pastor in Quincy at First Baptist Church, and in the last 9 years, I've been pastor of Holy Trinity Missionary Baptist Church in Macon, Missouri. Along with that, I'm a husband to Rachel Green for 32 years. I have two daughters, Gabrielle, who's a music teacher in Chicago, Simeon High School. She's 25. And I have a daughter who's 16, Isabella. My background not only is in ministry, but I also am a sales representative for Shookings Menswear. I've been in clothing business for some 20 years as well. My desire, obviously, is to spread the gospel, but to be able to open the eyes of so many others by giving my perspective on race and so many different matters that we're dealing with today.
Thank you very much. And Omaima?
Hi, I'm originally from Egypt. My parents are from Egypt, and I've been in the States most of my life. I've been in Canton specifically for about 20 years now. My husband works for Culver Stockton College. I worked there for a while as well, but now I work for customer service for a company. And I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. The youngest is the boy. He's doing his residency right now in Minneapolis. And I have 2 girls. One is a pediatrician and the other one is a pharmacist. Both live in Kansas. And I love doing these kinds of things because I've done several talks before, again, to promote understanding, to educate people. And I think education is the most important thing regarding racism and all that.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your introductions. And I appreciate you all being here with us today or this evening. I have a list of questions that I'm going to start with. It's kind of going to be a matter of you answering them. If you feel comfortable answering them, please do. If not, just say you'd rather pass, or just let me know that I don't need to wait for you to answer. And if everybody's ready, I will go ahead and get started. Also, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask each other as well, because sometimes we may hear something that's like, oh, hey, I have a question about that. So please feel free to do that if you catch up on that. So my first question is going to kind of play into looking at race, culture, and diversity, and also as part of who I am, a social justice realm. So my question to you all is, what does social justice mean to you as a whole, but also just even within the community of Quincy, Illinois?
Well, I'll take that, I guess. Your ability to handle the pause, The pregnant pause is remarkable. My belief that with social justice, it is justice for everyone. You can go to Dr. King, or you can talk about what social justice means. If there's no justice for anyone, if there's not justice for some, there's not justice for everyone. And I believe we're in a watershed moment as a country where we are forced to deal with the inequities that we've been dealing with for some time. And it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary to deal with. So we have equality for everyone. Quincy is a unique community in that we are a melting pot of sorts, although we're a small community. But as you can see with our panels, that there's a diversity across the board here. The challenge then for us is to be able to make sure that everyone is served correctly, that everyone is getting their fair shake. And it's something that has to be on the front of our minds at all the time, and not just when there's trouble arising. So it's one of those things that we're dealing with the country, but I know in the city, forums like this are going to help.
Thank you, Reverend Green. Luz, Omaima, or Joy want to comment, or should I move on to the next question?
I guess I would just add, sorry, excuse me, go ahead.
That's okay, go ahead.
Just wanted to add, just in my work with economic development, I think that a lot of times we talk about really opportunities and providing those kinds of opportunities and removing, barriers for, different communities to make sure that they have the same types of opportunities and privileges, especially when it comes to, in my work, small businesses, entrepreneurs, things like of that nature. So in a lot of my dealings, when I think about social justice, it's sort of that distribution and making sure that folks have that same privilege and opportunity.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, social justice, of course, is justice for all, like, like they were saying, but for me also, it's also to understand what the people want and what justice means to them, and then go from there. Because sometimes I see it a lot. One race will perceive justice for others in one way where they don't see it the same for themselves. So I think social justice, not only that everyone gets the fair share, but also that people get what they perceive is right for them.
So with that being said, and looking at social justice, as far as within the community, how do you feel, or not necessarily how do you feel, give us a little information or insight into your own race and culture and what you hope is being portrayed that helps educate others. And this one, I'm going to ask for each of you to answer. So how about we just start with Luz?
Okay, so basically, in my background, group of social, well, I would say ethnic group, is pretty small, I will say. So we're not that many families, at least that I'm in contact with, especially since I've been working more lately full time. So, but as far as we as a group, I feel like we have good opportunities for educating our kids in this community. So school is great for in this community for all as a parents to have our kids in public schools. And I see that at least in my family, we had a lot of opportunities. My kids had opportunities to participate, not just school related activities, sports and arts and volunteering opportunities in town. So I feel very blessed that my husband and I came to Quincy and we had the opportunity to raise our kids in Quincy. I cannot talk much about other cultures because obviously we are pretty busy. My husband and I work full time, so we pretty much go from work to our family and do all the parenting we did with our kids. But as far as I know, with the people I know from the Hispanic community, there's a great opportunity for our kids in this community.
Thank you. Omaima?
I'm sorry, can we go back to the question again? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, based on looking at kind of like the social justice dynamic, or even just in Quincy, can you give us, and not even specific to that, but more of what is something, or how can you educate us about your ethnicity or your culture and race that you would want people to know about you?
Well, we try to do a lot of things like this. We did before the pandemic hit. We were doing several speeches, different places, churches. We try to reach out and have, we've been in contact with several churches that we do things together. Sometimes they invite us for things, or we invite them. We try to educate everyone, but there's also a part that most people don't realize. Most people group culture and religion together. When it comes to us, they think all Muslims are the same. They don't realize, there's 1.3 billion Muslims all over the world, maybe 1.7, depending on who you're asking. And we're different cultures, different backgrounds. So you can't group all Muslims culture-wise as the same. They're completely different. A lot of people think most Muslims are Arabs. Arabs are only 20% of the Muslim population. So they're not all Muslims are Arabs. There's a lot that needs to be done, but we try our best and to bridge that gap and educate people all over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joy?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question, actually, in terms of
I know.
portrayed or what we want people to know. But certainly I kind of come at it from the viewpoint of first generation, parents again coming from the Philippines, and then also a little bit as a transplant of Quincy. I do have to say, if people are just looking at me, right, a lot of times people won't say Filipino. Maybe if you know my maiden name is Cortero. Usually if you have an Asian with a Hispanic last name or something Hispanic sounding, then you know that they have that Filipino heritage. But that also comes with some demons too, when it comes to our culture in general, and sort of just the colonization of the Philippines for many years by Spain, and sort of how that kind of tracks throughout our history. So there's a lot to unpack there in answering a short amount of time. But in general, what I do like people to know, very similar to sort of the Muslim culture, a lot of times people feel there's a strong Catholic heritage then also with the Philippines, but not everybody knows that actually there's actually also a strong Muslim community in the Philippines. So being colonized by Spain, having that Catholic background, but we do have strong faith in general, I would say. Filipinos are pretty known to be very hardworking, really wanting to contribute to the community that they live in. A lot of times that includes, contributing to, their faith. But they do have a strong faith in family and a respect for elders. And I think that kind of showcases, if we think about not just the immigrants that are here, but then also, again, that really kind of exudes culturally. So that would be maybe just like the umbrella statements that I could give when it comes to that. But, certainly a lot that I think people don't always think about when it comes to Filipino heritage. But that's just a little snapshot of maybe, why, let's say, our language also is very associated with a lot of Hispanic and Spanish verbs and words. So things like that people don't always know, and why that tie is so deep with our culture.
And going back to what you say, I mean, I have Filipino friends and we are so much alike.
Very much, yes.
Culture, family oriented, mostly Catholic. Mexicans, at least Mexicans, we are. Most people is Catholic, and yeah, respect for older people and especially family oriented.
Thank you. And Reverend Green.
Oh boy, where to start? It is a broad question, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully. We are diverse as African American community. In Quincy in particular, we have a long history of being here, and it's both good and bad. We're resilient people who have, over the years, have continually bonded together. What's changed the dynamic is that we're often, as the other cultures had mentioned, from the African American community, it's always had a history and tied to the church. But if we're honest, when we look at the state of the church, it has changed because the numbers have dwindled in a lot of our churches. And so the upbringing that many of us received started in the church. It was rooted and grounded in our faith. That has changed, and that changes the dynamics of the family structure. And so, yeah, it's a bit complicated, but I guess what I can say resounding is that the resiliency of the African American culture, not only nationwide, but in the city in particular, is amazing. We're a close-knit group of folk throughout the country and the community. What I would want to say, what changes also in the city and how we're perceived, a lot of it's economics. When I grew up, I'm 57. When I grew up, there were certain boundaries even which African Americans could or could not go. That's changed. That's changed. If you have the money, you have the means, you're able to go where you please. Whether you're received warmly, I'm not sure. But to live, a good example, years ago, and those who are watching know that you were not really allowed to go past south of 12th, or excuse me, south of Main Street after dark. It was not good for your health. You definitely did not live on the south side or on the east side. And now it's a blessing that now it's because if you have the means, then you can go in a lot of those places. So city has changed, I think, for the better in a lot of areas, but there's some challenges as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So my next question kind of goes in looking at, if you can recall, I know this might be a hard question too, when, if any, time in your life would you say that when was the first time you recall or had an experience with dealing with like racism or prejudice or discrimination that you can remember and recall?
I'll take that. When I was young, 6, 7 years old, dealing with name calling, using the N-word, it is, it's sad, but it has occurred throughout my life. It's not pretty, but I've lived in several cities. I've lived in Springfield, Illinois. I lived in Champaign, Illinois. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin. All great cities, but all have their share of problems. And the same applies to Quincy. I've been in retail for a better portion of 30, 40 years. And I've seen it where I've been followed in stores, even working as a merchandiser or vendor in a store, still being watched, still being talked to and questioned. So that does happen, even today. So yeah, the questions, and I think every person of color, whether you're sensitive to it, and maybe sometimes maybe too sensitive to it, you feel as though you're being treated differently, even just walking into a store. I myself, I'm a large man, and can be imposing if I did not smile. I'm well aware of that. So whether it's right that I do it, but I know it will put some people at ease. It's not right, but it's the reality of which we live.
Thank you.
I can say, I do remember the first time. It was actually, I remember being traveling in a vehicle, and kids I could see them kind of on the highway, car next door, and just kind of making, you could tell they were sort of like, emulating Asian eyes, right? But in a very mocking way. So that was kind of interesting to me, because I didn't really fully understand that until sort of talking to my parents about it. Like, oh, these kids were making these faces, but they were doing this gesture, and then realizing, kind of what that was. And then, yeah, I mean, more recently, I wouldn't say that it's an experience that I've had here in Quincy, which is great, but there has been a lot of just very charged emotions, when it comes to Asian culture recently. And, but unfortunately, I do know that I have had family members experience that. I have a sister that lives in New York in the Brooklyn Williamsburg neighborhood. And she's definitely experienced a few incidences, even, recently, to that effect. And, I'm also just, pretty aware that, I myself, with lighter skin, I don't think that it's something that affects me as much as many of my other, brothers and sisters that are Black and brown. And, those are things that you have to be mindful for. And I always try to look out for, but still something where it's, forums like this where you can continue to have those kinds of conversations and be really open and about it, and how we can also continue to advocate and elevate one another. But yes, it's, it's sad when it's one of those first moments where you realize that as a child, because I think that when you're growing up and those things are, they're not so prevalent, they're not in your mindset. You don't grow up feeling these things or doing these things. So it's interesting when that first moment happens. And it's really about, I think, how the people around you help you kind of understand those things and sort of deal with it and press on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't had any situation that happened to me, but my daughters were called beaners, what are you doing here? Go back to Mexico. We don't like you here, in high school. So it was traumatic for them. But school really, counselors talked to them and talked to the students, and things got better, but it was hard for them. We talked to them, and I said, you know what, you have to stand up for yourself. Mom and dad they're not gonna be there for you. You have to go talk to, your principal or counselor, and they talk to the student, and, and they have friends who back them up and they stand out for them. I think that would, was something that really helped them to feel like they were not alone. But yeah, they had their times, and, they made them stronger. So the only thing you can do is just, tell them, you know who you are, and we all here, we have the same opportunities. We are all human. We just look different. And they didn't even know, in their heads, they say, I never thought I was different until I heard people telling me that. So it's sad, but, it's something they have to live with, and,
Yes.
just accept that, people is going to say things and say, okay, I know I'm different, so what are you gonna do?
Right. I also like how Joy said, we have to continue to elevate each other. And I think that definitely comes with the strength in numbers. I think we have a question.
Do you mind if I address that subject as well before we move on?
I am so sorry. Yes, please do.
That's okay. I think as a child, I was blissfully ignorant to racism. I didn't, kids fight, kids do things. I didn't really think of it as racism. Even growing up, it wasn't that much. I think it was It was not as much as after 9/11, I think, is when it started being severe, and when people started equating, Islam with other, unfortunately, with terrorism and things like that, and the media wasn't helping in that accord at all. So, and yeah, I've had my fair share. I can't remember what was the first one because there were so many from different people, from different circumstances. But I think the ones I remember the most are the ones that affect my kids. When it comes to my kids, that's what I can't tolerate.
That's when Mama Bear comes out, right?
Yes. I mean, usually when it's to me, I just ignore it. But if it's something affecting my kids, I always take action. I just can't stand there when, do whatever you want to me, but don't touch my kids.
Yeah.
May I ask what do you do? How do you respond? How do you help them, your children?
Well, it was different situations. So for example, we had a situation where I think it was 5 years after 9/11, a speaker came to the school and started saying that all Muslims are terrorists. And if you have a Muslim neighbor, be very careful, carry guns, basically telling them to terrorize anyone Muslim that you know. And this was a school auditorium, and Canton School is kindergarten through high school. So it was the whole school. So as soon as my kids came home in tears, of course, I just called the superintendent, which I knew him. Canton's a small town, so we know the principal, we know the superintendent, and his children were with my kids in school. And I told him this is completely inappropriate, and something needs to be done about this. Several teachers apologized to my kids and told them, we're sorry, we had to hear that. And unfortunately, that speaker was the mayor at that time. So I kind of campaigned everyone against him. And the next elections, thankfully, he was not chosen again. So, different things like that. Sometimes, if once we were at a store at Sam's Club, and they were giving out chocolate samples, teeny tiny Hershey Kisses, and then the lady, my kids went with their friends and asked, can we have a sample? I wasn't there, I was busy shopping. And then she told them, bring a parent. So I went with them, and she goes, you can take one. I had 3 kids and their friends were also 3, so 6 children altogether. And she goes, you can have one and share it. And I looked at her and I go, share a Hershey Kisses? Are you kidding me? So I just told them in Arabic, all of them spoke Arabic, just take chocolate, and ignore her. So they each took one, and she was standing there, oh, I'm going to get fired. And in my head, I'm thinking, get fired for not doing your job, sure. And then there comes, while we're still standing right there, a father, a mother. The father is carrying this little baby, maybe 6 months old, and they have about a 5-year-old child with them. So she goes to them, oh, here, have one each, have one for the baby. And the dad goes, no, the baby can't have chocolate. She goes, that's okay, take it, So, and of course they were white and we weren't. So, things like that, again, because it was my kids, I said, do this. If it was just me, I would have just left the situation and left. And there's so many to just talk about, but these are 2 that stand out to me.
I can actually relate a little, Omaima, to the whole Canton dynamic. I had a lot, actually it was an elderly individual that I struggled a lot with in the community when I worked at one of the convenience stores there. So I can identify with some of those.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's everywhere. It's not just Canton, but
True.
but that was just an example. Yeah.
True.
We did have a question in the chat. I just want to make sure everyone was wrapped up. I didn't want to interrupt that. A little bit more of a positive note, but what is the proudest element of your heritage that fills you with joy when you share that element with others? Or what great richness of your heritage makes you proud to share?
For me, it's oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay.
No, lady first.
I talked, I guess, a little bit about our culture when it comes to sort of just respect in general for our elders or and I think something that not a lot of people maybe know unless they know the culture is that we actually do have when you have an aunt or an uncle to associate with elders, we also have that for the eldest siblings. So an older brother or an older sister, we actually have words that kind of go along with that. So I'm the oldest and my sister calls me Ate Joy. If you're an older brother, you're known as Kuya. And if you have multiple siblings and the oldest of the boys, let's say, is called Koyang. And so there's certain things that I think are kind of just unique to our culture that I like to share about that. And when we greet our elders, we have something that's called mano. And it's basically a greeting where you take the hand of your elders and you sort of put it on your forehead like a blessing. So that's a greeting that we share as we say hello or say goodbye. And I think that that's just a very interesting part of our heritage.
Great. What I was going to simply just say with our heritage, family is paramount. It means everything, whether your parent is a one-person parent, single parent household, or two, or if you have your grandparents. I was blessed that, in fact, where I'm sitting in here is a house my grandfather built, and it's right next to my parents. And so I grew up next to my grandparents, had a great relationship with my grandparents. And now we made the decision 20 years ago to move back from what I thought was an amazing community in Madison, Wisconsin. Very diverse, had the lowest unemployment in the country. Just a great place to move back to Quincy without a job, sight unseen. But the main reason was to get back close to family, which in our culture means, as she just stated, a great deal. And my wife's grandmother helped raise her, and although we lived 6 hours away, we never got home like we wanted to. And so we moved back primarily for family, and I never regretted it at all. So it gives great joy. And I mentioned the house I live in now. There are a great deal of family gatherings with extended family that are in my backyard. I'm blessed that I walk around this house and I can remember as a child running around in this house, and now it's mine. And so as impactful family is, it stays with me many years later. So in our culture, many have the same story. And that's what is the glue, along with obviously the Lord in our life, what keeps us together, what keeps us going.
I will say same thing. Family is very important for us to even, kids don't leave the house until they marry. That happens in my family too. My sister, she actually moved out of the house when she was 30 and she wasn't married, and it was a shock for my sisters and brothers. But so family is there for you. You need anything, they will do anything for you. And also something else that, it's kind of cliche, but it's a real, it's something that is actually true, is we are hard workers. So we have an work ethic, and I can see it, my family all are hard workers, and here my family, my daughters, and people I know from Quincy, they, you live for work. I mean, you live for your family and you live for going to work and do your best. So, and also we are very happy people. I think we like to be positive and, live life, I guess, trying to see the good things about life every day. So at least in my perspective, my family, I think Mexicans, we are kind of happy people.
It's so interesting to hear all of you talk about family, because I feel like everything that all of you said is exactly the same with us. We're very family oriented. I'm actually right now in my brother's house in Oregon visiting him. We always try to meet, even though we're in different states, different countries. Sometimes we try to meet. We try to have all our important holidays together. We also have names for elders. You know, we call them with also specific names, like as a form of respect. One of the things when we grew up, you know, I can't call somebody much older than me by their first name, whereas here it's normal. And that was kind of a shock for me to see people calling elders by their first names, whereas we have to, you know, if it's my aunt, it's auntie. If it's someone like Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. or doctor or something, you know, and then if they're related to us, we have specific names. If I have a much older brother, we also have a specific name, a specific way to address them. So it's so interesting that all of you combined, we have all of you combined, we have all those in our culture.
We are more alike than different.
It is, that's true. That's very true.
Absolutely. And also in the African American culture, you don't address someone older than you by their first name. At least when I grew up, that wouldn't be pleasant, put it that way.
I have just two more questions that I would like to ask, and then maybe open it up even more. My first question for everyone is, if there was one thing or an opportunity to make a change, whether it's in the community, the world, or self, what aspect would you what would you do? Or what would it be for?
I would change the educational system.
There you go.
Because I don't feel that education here, I feel it was everything that was put in the books was put by white men, and it's still that way so many years later. And it's just one perspective, and you don't learn about cultures. I mean, my kids in school took American history every year for their 12 years of schooling, and European history, I think, was just like maybe 2 or 3 days in the whole 12 years of schooling. I don't think there was even mention of that many different cultures. You know, they took a little bit about Egypt, which is where my parents are originally from, but it was more of the pyramids and, you know, ancient things, and children still think that people there ride camels and live in tents. They don't realize, you know, that that's a country like any other country, and people like any other people. So I think that our educational system really needs to be changed, updated, and more inclusive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
No, I very much agree with you on education in general and kind of that perspective. I think also, coming off of a weekend from QFest, I don't know if everybody knew that there was also a cultural aspect that was added to the event, and it was small, but we had several cultures there that did everything from dance and art to a little bit of history, and then some food, which I thought was really fun. And I hope that grows in the future, because again, as we sit here and talk about the similarities between our cultures, I think that those things can be expressed in community. So in terms of opportunity, I hope that we have maybe more opportunities to really experience all the different cultures within our community. But yes, definitely education is a very important part for our children to learn. Just thinking about some of the projects that we were sort of working on celebrating in our in the work that I do, ashamed to say that it wasn't until just a few years ago where I learned through like the 1619 project, sort of that history of slavery coming into the United States, and then also Tulsa and the Black Wall Street, things like of that nature, where I feel like those things have so blatantly been left out of, of teaching. And then, in general, again, going back to, my cultural heritage, and, I don't know that that's even in the history books, because after Spain, we really were occupied by the U.S. for a while, and I don't know that people kind of understand how we sort of immigrated into the United States and kind of also became part of the workforce here, and how that looks like, and what that movement looked like. So there's a lot of things in our cultures in general that I don't know that is really covered. And with the U.S. being that melting pot, I think that those are the things that really deserve to be spoken about, and that we should educate our children about how this country really was formed.
Yeah, and talking about events like the one from last weekend, I'd never seen stuff like this happening in many, many years. So I think that will be something that we need in Quincy. More exposure to cultures, to traditions from other people from different backgrounds. When I came first to the States, I didn't know anybody. And I know there was a group, a newcomers, and I meet once with them, and then, I had my daughters, I was busy, but I don't know if those type of groups exist now, where people can just get together and, just get to know people from different backgrounds. And I don't know if things like this can, we can create something that we can, help people to just feel more part of it, and, their kids get to know each other, and, just grow a different community from the kids and education. So that would be something I would change.
I can actually answer that question for you. So the newcomers group does still exist. And there actually is also a concierge program that I launched right before I left economic development for Adams County, but they are continuing that. And it is also a part of a newcomers program to, yes, help welcome either folks that are new residents to the area, or also, boomerang residents. So if you've moved away and are coming back. The Great River Economic Development Foundation is kind of taking a lead on that, because there's a lot of work with talent attraction that they are doing. That's a very important part of, basically their work is trying to find and create different opportunities and places for people to meet one another and learn about each other. Because yes, our workforce also, especially the talent that we are attracting to the region, is a very diverse workforce.
Anybody else?
No, what was the question again? I think they all have great answers. I'm trying to remember the original question.
The original question is, what is, if you could have an opportunity or the ability to make a change, in whether it's the world or the community or within South, like what would you choose? What would you choose to change about?
I think our first panelist mentioned the education system, not only in the schools, K through 12, what's taught, the content, but also what's the education outside the classroom. I think in the last year and a half, Quincy has seen things they have never seen, which and on the surface would seem terrible, with demonstrations and protests. I think it's actually one of the best things that ever happened. Unfortunately, under those circumstances, be it George Floyd and all those who have been slain and come under the brutality, but it's brought an awareness. What's different? What's the change that's happened in the country? Has it gotten negative and worse? I don't think so. From the standpoint, racism has always existed, but it's always been swept under the rug. It's always been, go along to get along. And honestly, I think when the nation saw and the world saw what happened to George Floyd, people said enough. enough. We won't. What's that? I'm sorry.
I think that was somebody else.
Okay, but my point being is that it ignited the amount of African Americans and those who I know who've never been involved socially to really stand up and let their voices be heard. I don't think when we talked about, yes, the rioting, I don't agree with that, but the demonstrations, we as a people would not be where we are without demonstrations during the civil rights movement. And I think what I saw that sparked this was when I saw people we came together in Washington Park and had peaceful demonstrations, and people came from different ethnic groups, and they had dialogue. That all happened. Obviously, the scripture says all things work together for the good to them that love the Lord, to the called according to His purpose. Even some of the bad things work for the good. So we open up and have dialogue about racial issues that we never had before. What the problem with our nation, hear me good, is this: we don't have a skin problem, we have a sin problem. And there's so many people who, with hate is not a skin, it's a sin. And that's where our country is lying. We have to deal with how we've been. And a lot of people don't like to deal with the truth but the reality is we have to confront that, and that's what's happening in our country. And it leads to these opportunities where we can share and listen to other cultures and hear some of the similar experiences that a lot of us as African Americans have felt. So what I would change is that we continue to do what we're doing, to demonstrate, to be able to have dialogue, to make a change. We won't make a change. You can't legislate hate. You can't put a law that's going to stop somebody from hating. We have to go in and help change people by showing the love of our Creator, showing the love that we have as families, and that's the only way you wipe out hate.
Thank you, guys. My last question is, what legacy do you want to leave for your families?
Well, I would say my legacy will be be yourself and also do something for the community. So leave something, produce something that somebody's gonna learn from or use in the future. Lead or live with a good example. Be respectful, and basically, just live this life and with a purpose, not just live and do whatever. So and at least on my the way I think, or I've been living my life, is how can I help? How can I help to the community? What can I give back? Because I receive a lot. I am very thankful to we came to Quincy and have this great community to raise kids safely and with great education. And what can I give back? Well, my only purpose or the thing that I like to do and I want to help is teaching what I know, and teaching letting the kids know that there's more out there. It's not just we here in Quincy, there's more out there. So I guess live your life and give back.
I definitely have to agree with that. I mean, I know I'm biased working with a lot of different communities, but I think that that's very important. Doing good things and being involved, and really, action over inaction in the end. I think that, you know, you really kind of build the community based around the things that you also want to see. So if there are things that you're passionate about, and if there are things that, you know, that you want to see change, then you can really be the change. And I think that that's really important because, you know, and you know, a lot of times there's a lot of systems that are in place, and again, a lot of potential barriers that have sort of been built up to create, you know, community change. But I think my legacy, you know, especially because I don't have children, so there's nothing that I'm going to be leaving to like a biological child. But with the friends and the family that I've made, with my goddaughter that I have here in the community, with great family and friends that I've made here in the community. You know, I feel like that's the legacy that I'm going to be able to leave, is that I didn't just sit on the sidelines, that I kind of, whether it was I was given the seat at the table or I elbowed my way for the seat at the table. I think that that's important, because if it means something to you and you see something in your community that you want to have happen, there's a way to do it. And a lot of times it is the squeaky wheel. So that's the other part of it. And it's not just, you know, you can't make change if you're just going to be a Facebook warrior, you know, commenting on posts on, you know, news or whatever. You know, you really got to get in there. And there's a group of really passionate people that will do those things with you. But just not to be afraid of that, and, you know, to enjoy then hopefully the fruits of that labor.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with both ladies, I think, with everything they said also. And I think with me, there's an extra thing that because I wear the hijab, you know, the headscarf, and so to my two daughters as well. And I'm hoping that I've left them strong enough to deal with anything that can come their way, because, you know, we kind of walk with a target on our heads. So I hope that I've left them strong enough to be able to do, you know, to be happy and do what they need. And we educated them well, so hopefully that will help them as well.
My prayer is that the legacy I leave that has made a difference. I think Dr. King said it in a song, it's if I can help somebody along the way, then my living will not be in vain. So if I'm not talking about just my family, raising my daughters, but as what we're doing here in the community, talking and sharing, one of my greatest joys is being able to travel, having lived in different communities, and being able to open your eyes up to see this world beyond this great city, but to see there is something beyond this. And that's my desires, to help make a difference.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody's input and insight. Are there any other questions that maybe we haven't covered or that somebody has?
When we first started, I saw a question that Carol posted, but I didn't get to read it, so I'm not sure if we covered it or not.
That was the one that I read out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think Jim Burns has his hand up. Jim, is that right?
I did, yeah. I hesitate to jump in here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I don't have a question, but I am really taken with what has happened here. I am just overwhelmed with the information and the things that I've learned in just a short period of time. Quickly, I just want to say to Joey that you taught me that the Filipino culture certainly treats the elderly a lot better than my Irish heritage. I want to tell you that. I'm an older person, and that kind of respect is not really given in European and English, Irish relationships. It's much more. All I want to say is I appreciate your respect for the elders. But that's aside. What really has grabbed me is an idea that we have not really come together as a group like this very much in Quincy for a while, as I understand. At least I haven't been a part of it. And Jeff said something that really struck me. And it had to do with his experience with religion and his culture and other religions in this city and other cultures. And the whole idea came to me that, you know, the divisions between us as cultures and ethnic groups and race also has this element of difference between religions and kind of a restriction between them. Oh, she's Catholic. Oh, she's Protestant. Oh, she belongs to that black church. And we ought to break that too. Get into our own little package, you know, and we say, well, we've got, and particularly with religion, we feel we have the truth. But everyone has the truth, their own. And perhaps, Jeff, based on what you were saying, perhaps we could take that idea a little bit further and take a look at your experience in church, my experience with other people with their church community, and see if we can draw together in that kind of a opportunity to be together.
Absolutely.
I'm speaking too long. That's enough, but I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Jeff. Particularly, enjoy
idea.
all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
I might add something before we conclude. I'd ask each of the panelists and the moderator to, they all have Anissa's email. Please send your mailing information to her, okay? And that would be appreciated. So Anise Mallory's email address, you should have a Gmail in there somewhere, and just send it on to her. Thank you, that's all.
I have something, if I may. Wouldn't it be great in Quincy if we had something called a culture club? And once a month, you know, invite people to come together, and, you know, maybe each month could be a different culture that we could learn about, and learn philosophies and food and dances. I do want to say at the Q Fest this past weekend too, I loved, specifically to you, Joy, I loved the cultural, that idea. I think it's for a new thing this year, but I just love that. And I love the idea of it expanding, and hope that it will, because you know, you can go to other cities and you can go to their festivals, and there's festivals with all the different cultures and all the different foods. It's not so easy here in Quincy, but maybe we can do something like that. One thing that I learned along the way here in terms of racial and the differences among us is that one way to bridge the gap is by getting to know one another. That is what I have learned, is what is one of the things that's recommended. I mean, we can read books, and that's really good too, about different cultures. And of course, I agree, education in America needs a makeover. But by getting to know each other one to another, and I feel like this tonight was so enlightening for me, to get to know each of you speakers. I know a little of you for the most part, but to hear your stories and to see you like in this Zoom opportunity, I think there's some great things about Zoom, and I've really appreciated tonight to all Zoom together. So thank you, everyone. I just want to say it's been wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with hoping that we can do something monthly, like some type of cultural club or something that would, you know, gather as many different cultures as possible. I think that would be a great idea if we can actually do something, even if it's not every month, every whatever, but
I think I'm Yeah, I'm being too ambitious.
I mean, every month would be wonderful if we can do it, you
We
know.
better
whoever
start out
can, but-
slower. Maybe holidays or something, maybe a particular holidays that are certain cultural holidays would be a way. I do want to mention, this is partially hosted by the Unitarian Church, which is at 16th and Hampshire. And we have a lovely space that we call the Garden Room. And we would love to host. So it's an invitation. I'll speak not just for myself, but I know for others who go to the same church. Carol goes there and Jim Burns. So, and Taylor is our tech person today. And thank you, Taylor. In the Garden Room, let Carol know what holidays are coming up or special occasions. And maybe we could just get started with this. So.
And I'm not affiliated with the Unitarian Church, but I can vouch for them. They've invited us several times. They've been gracious to host us a lot. And yes, they're a wonderful place to meet. And thank you for that.
Let's do that. Let's do more, shall we?
That would be great.
I agree.
Now I will turn it back over to Anise.
Anisha, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank y'all so much. This has been very interesting, and I'm glad that those that were able to participate did. I want to thank all the panelists and our moderator for accepting the invitation and for actually getting all us together to do this. Of course, I want to thanks to the audience that we invited and NAACP members. Thanks to Carol, especially Carol was the one that gathered most of our panelists. I want to thank our tech support, Taylor Wood and the Quincy Unitarian Church for the Zoom line, all their help that they have done. I thought this was wonderful. I learned a lot myself. That we have a lot more in common than we do differences. But it's also good to know the differences too. So this has been wonderful. Thank you for sharing about your culture and what you do. And it really made us familiar with the different cultures that we see here in Quincy. So I thank y'all for coming, and maybe we need to do this again. And I like Lisa's idea about a culture club. So, but thanks to everyone that joined in and tuned in. And so I'll say good night.